What's good, everybody? Time for a DL short. Now, I don't know if you guys have heard of Professor Scott Galloway, but he is a G. You can find him everywhere in mainstream media. I've seen him on Bill Maher. I've seen him on CNN. I've seen him on MSNBC. But I've recently done a deep dive throughout YouTube and just caught him on multiple platforms. And he's the guy that talks about the dangers of uh, lonely, sexless men, right? He talks about this, but there's a flip side to that. And so I've noticed in his conversations, he talks about the dangers of, these lonely men and what they end up doing sometimes. And, how that this is a bad thing for society uh, at large. But he also goes in, he talks about social and economic implications for lonely men. He talks about all this other stuff about lonely men, active shooting events, the self deletion rate, all that stuff. But I caught him on this platform and he was talking about the effect of loneliness on women and why women are having such a hard time finding men. So we have this lonely male epidemic, right? We got these lonely men, sexless men, but we also have women who are opting out as well. So this video is pretty good video here. When he kind of delves into it a little bit, let's check it out.
Well, we all know women, I'm sure this happens to you all the time, really interesting, high character, successful, attractive women, usually in their 30s, sometimes in their 40s, who will say, I can't find anyone to date. And it's not that they can't find anyone to date, it's that they can't find anyone they want to date. And there's some dynamics here. The first is,
can I just interject to validate your point there? She also said to me,
and I forget the name of this brother on his podcast. I forget the name, so I'm not even gonna say the wrong name or whatever. But this is a very successful YouTuber out of UK. I believe he's in London. Forgive me for not knowing his name, but we'll link it in the description so you guys can watch the whole thing. What brother Scott Galloway said just now, I've said a million times since I found myself in this space, and especially when I talk to women, older women in their 30s, women in their 40s, women who are successful. They do tend to say, where are the good men? There aren't any good men. How do I get a good guy? And I've said that a million times, like, you can have a man tomorrow. You can have a good man tomorrow. You can have a man that will love you, pedestalize you, be willing to die for you, that wants to build a life with you tomorrow. You just don't want that guy that's available. Most people want the best that they can get. Most women want the best guy that they can get. And the guy that they want is very rare. So they can't get him. They can have fun with him. Like, the guy will say, hey, they'll see him, interact with him, he'll smash him, but he won't commit. So, and it's kind of cool to see that. You know what I mean? Like, I've been saying this forever, and I only have a bunch of letters behind my name. I'm no professor. You know what I mean? I'm just in these trenches, but let's continue.
I'm not willing to drop my standards.
Well, and it's like Warren Buffett said, the key to a healthy marriage is low expectations. What's happening is, and I think his name's Chris Williams. He kind of reminds me of you. He's this handsome young podcaster who's blowing by all us old guys. You know Chris?
Yeah, I know Chris.
Anyways, he does a fantastic job, and I've learned a lot from him. But he calls it the high heels effect. And that is every year for the last 50 years, women have become better educated and they're making more money. In urban centers, they've now, under the age of 30, blown by. They're now making more money. More single women in the US own houses than single men. They're getting taller every year. And the reason he uses height is that 50% of women say they won't date a guy shorter than them. It's probably more like 80%. And even if they're not cognizant of it, just anthropologically, subconsciously, they're just usually not attracted to men shorter than them because they have something telling them that this individual is less likely to be able to physically protect you. So you're just...
And something, this is something that people in the red pill spaces, like the manosphere spaces, have been hearing over and over again for 10, 15, 20 years. This guy is not red pill by any stretch of the imagination. This guy is not a part of the manosphere movement. This is a professor. He studies this sort of thing. I don't study this sort of thing at an academic level, right? At a collegiate level. I am in the trenches. I'm just looking at what's going on. And, it is mostly anecdotal, but because I can only reach so many folks, but I do travel a bit. I do like to interact with folks. I am hearing everything he said come from women. you know, you hear about the 6 feet, 6 figures, you know, 6-pack or whatever. When it comes to the height component, women want a man that's taller than them. They prefer that. Will they talk to a guy who's short? Of course, especially if the guy has game. But just the average person will say, yeah, I want a guy that's taller than me. He doesn't have to be 6 feet, 6'2", 6'5", just taller than me. That's what women say. And generally they'll say he has to be taller than me when I'm in heels. And that's pretty much, I've heard that 1,000,001 times, right? So there is something about the height component when it comes to mate selecting. There's so many women, like, they fight me tooth and nail on this, but then I see them out in public and they're, you know, some 5'2" girl who's out there with a guy who's 6'2". Like, I thought height didn't matter. Well, I'm not waiting for his height. Yeah, okay. Okay, let's continue.
It's at a disadvantage from a height standpoint. Now, metaphorically, women are getting taller every year and men are getting shorter, right? Men mate socioeconomically horizontally and down, women horizontally and up. But when the pool of men who are socioeconomically senior to women, it just means that the quote unquote pool of viable mates for women is going down every year. And women have been told they can have it all. And what I found is you can't have it all. Or let me put it this way, you can have it all, you just can't have it all at once. And that to focus on their careers, which, by the way, I think is a good thing. I think economic viability is just super important for everyone, including women. But the reality is, as they have gotten taller, men have gotten shorter, so there's just less pairing. Society has a tendency to evaluate a woman's success through the lens of her romantic success, not as much for men. People look at you and think, and I don't know your relationship status, but people look at you like, guy who's killing it. He's killing it, and he's single. Oh my God, it's good to be Stephen Bartlett. A woman in her 30s who's killing a professional is alone. It's like super successful, but your single status is a feature. For women, it's seen as a bug, and you both might be just as lonely. But it's or you might be engaging in, and I'm projecting here, I have no idea what your situation is here, but there's this dynamic where the men who are in the top 10% can engage in Porsche polygamy. And that is women with online dating now believe, there's something wrong with this, that, and I'm going to be, this is going to get me in trouble, but let's rate everybody. Most people will acknowledge that some people are more attractive than others, and they find certain people less and more attractive. A woman of average attractiveness can have a relationship. And when I say relationship, that's code for sex with someone who's in the top 10%. But that individual is probably not going to establish a long-term relationship. And because of the lack of friction and connection and meeting people via text message or online dating, the top 10% of men are getting 80+ % of the opportunities for short-term relationships or sex. So they can engage in what's called Porsche polygamy, and that there's not a lot of motivation for them to establish long-term relationships, which leads to bad behavior and a lack of household formation. So the guys that most women want and believe that they should be in a relationship with are the least likely to establish a long-term relationship. And then the bottom 90 either have little or absolutely no interest from women. So
on this platform, you've heard me say that 1,000,000 times. And that was coming from a professional, right? An academic, one of the leading scholars. He's not saying it from a negative standpoint. He's simply reporting the situation on the ground. I believe in the 80-20 rule. He's at 90-10. 90-10. And what am I talking about? I'm talking about that, you know, most women want the top 20% of guys and the bottom 80% of guys get little to no sexual access. He's saying this, most women want the top 10% guys and the 90% get little to no access. Fellas, what does this mean? This means you got to get out there and make yourself better. You got to get out there and figure out what women are wanting. You have to do a self-assessment, a true self-assessment, and enhance your good points, right? Like really enhance that, and you have to try to minimize your bad points. Just speaking from a person who, like, I'm trying to get out there and be successful. If my mission is to go out here and just be able to have sexual access with a woman, and I'm a short guy, I'm gonna have to hit the gym and get real muscular. I'm gonna have to be extremely socially aware. I'm gonna have to be very, very funny. I'm going to have to be very charming, right? I'm going to have to be so much more to make up for that deficit in height, right? I'm going to have money. I'm going to have to be able to provide experiences. I'm going to have to be someone that other men accept, right? High top tier guys accept amongst them, and other women want to smash, right? You got to do all that stuff, right? And then of course it goes, you might be tall, but you might be broke, or you might be tall, but you might be fat. It's so many different things. But it boils down to what women are seeking. And again, this is a guy who's not red pill. He's not a part of the manosphere. He probably doesn't even know it exists. He's simply saying that this is how it is. And like he said, there's so many women who have the money, but they're like an average woman, a 5 or a 6. But they'll bump into one of these top tier guys, and the top tier guy will sleep with them. But that's it. He'll put him in a rotation. He'll have his fun, and then he'll move on. And then she, in her mind, she's thinking, well, that's what I qualify for because I got that attention. I got that sexual attention. That means I could get me one of those guys. I just got to keep myself out there, and they just get ran through. When the truth is, if you want a guy who's really going to love you, you're going to have to get a guy that's at your level, not even below you. You're going to have to, if you're a 5'6", you're going to have to get a guy who's a 5'6". But that's not what's going on today in the dating marketplace. Let's continue.
So I want to be clear. No woman is responsible for servicing a man. But what I think has happened is this dynamic where, because online has given everyone access to everyone, the majority of women are all interested in the same group. And this group is now much less likely to engage in a long-term relationship. And the result is just there's a disproportionate number of men and women who, quite frankly, are just lonely. But men have a tendency, when they don't have a romantic relationship, to not only not have that romantic relationship, but then they have fewer friends. They go out less. They're less professionally successful. If I didn't have a mate who told me we need to save for a house, I'm not sure I wouldn't have been smoking pot and drinking every night. She was like, if you want to continue to have a relationship and have sex with me, you've got to get your shit together. Young men need that. They need the guardrail of a romantic interest, the cocktail or the peanut butter and chocolate of a household where one person is more risk aggressive. That's really important. And pushing the boundaries of what can be done. And then another person who's more practical. And that oftentimes goes into gender roles, not always, and sometimes it's flipped, but that's a powerful combination. 1 + 1 really does equal 3. And across every species, you see that the majority of really wonderful things, including offspring, but other things in terms of building a society, are a mix of different attributes. And so we have just fewer and fewer of that peanut butter and chocolate in households. There are now more people not only living alone, but living with their parents than ever before, because they're not establishing this relationship. So it's absolutely bad for women, but typically women still are economically successful, still find places to put that love, and quite frankly, don't start killing themselves or killing others. So it's not that it's any less bad, but the knock-on effects tend to be less bad for society.
I couldn't agree with the brother more. Shout out to Brother Galloway. He knows exactly what he's talking about. The dating game has changed, and technology has taken it to a place that it's going to be almost impossible to recover. Almost impossible. It's going to take a huge shift. And there's a lot of people out there, a lot of men who are looking for answers. They're turning to mentors now. They're going into mastermind groups. They're joining tribes. They're trying to get to that point where they can at least get themselves a mate. And how are they doing it? They're doing the work. They're putting work into themselves. They're learning how to make money. They're learning how to level up. They're learning what to do with that money. They're learning how the opposite sex is mate selecting, and they're doing everything they can to be successful, not only financially, but also romantically and emotionally when it comes to mate selecting. Because you got to be careful out there. There's a lot of bad people, there's a lot of bad actors, men and women out there. So you got to be careful. So that's where we are now. It's just, I wanted to show this video. I wanted people to see that, it's not just the red pill, manosphere, mano swamp movement. It's not just Rollo Tomasi, Rich Cooper, Donovan Sharp, Fresh and Fit, DL Saint. No, the true academics are out there looking at this as well. You see what's going on now. You see what brother Dr. Scott Galloway just said, and he's out there ringing the bell, and he's out there trying to get people bring awareness to the situation out here. Our dating game has changed, and it ain't never going back to the way it used to be. And there's so many people out there who wanted to go back so bad. I don't see it happening, especially with the way technology is today. I just don't see it happening. But we'll see. Let me know in the comments below what you think. You think I'm off base here? You think I'm crazy? You think I'm brilliant? You think Dr. Galloway is brilliant? Let me know what you guys are thinking. I appreciate you taking your time and rocking out with me. I'm DL saying I'm gonna talk to you later. Peace.